Kennedy Sepulvedo is our Native American Affairs correspondent, and while she mostly covers current issues impacting the tribes, she also provides great historical background that enables the past to inform the present. She joins us now with two impactful stories she brought us in the last 12 months. Kennedy.
And Rich, this one does have that history and present day. So this July, survivors of Indian boarding schools gave firsthand accounts of their trauma they faced during their time at those residential schools as part of the U.S. Interior Department's Road to Healing tour. I must warn you, details from the survivors may be disturbing to some audiences.
I spent 12 years in this hellhole.
I was no longer allowed to use my name. I was given a number.
So I woke up and I looked, and here they were whipping my two sisters.
We look like little gray-headed women.
Day one of the Department of Interior's Road to Healing tour met with tears and heavy hearts. Secretary of Interior Deb Haaland and Assistant Secretary for Indian Affairs Brian Newland kicked off the year-long tour at Riverside Indian School, which opened in 1871 and was one of the 408 schools designed to assimilate Native children into white society between 1819 and 1969.
I will listen with you, I will grieve with you, I will weep, and I will feel your pain. This is one step among many that we will take to strengthen and rebuild the bonds within Native communities that federal Indian boarding schools set out to break. Those steps have the potential to alter the course of our future.
To the survivors of these boarding schools and their families, the Secretary and I want to thank you for your courage.
One by one, survivors spoke of their time at Indian boarding schools. A Kiowa man and Marine Corps veteran shared his story from two boarding schools.
And the moment I landed there, they took me downstairs, took all my clothes off, and threw a bunch of green stuff all over me. It stung like hell. And when they put the water on me, it stung even worse. They did not care. They didn't bat an eyelash. And they said, if you cry, we will whip you. And when I got out of St. Patrick's Indian Mission, I thought it was over. But then I landed at Riverside, here. And it started all over again.
The story doesn't change much for each of the elders' first day at boarding school.
They stripped me down, they cut my hair off, and they poured liquid in my hair.
So she was fighting with the nuns to keep her hair, and that nun just chopped her hair real hard, so it cut a piece of her earlobe off.
The matron took her scissors and cut off our hair and filled our heads with DDT. This was later banned by the U.S. government as a dangerous pesticide.
We had kerosene poured on our hair, I guess to kill any lice or whatever was in our hair. And after that was done, we stepped out and we were told to sit on a chair, still naked. And our long hair was cut off.
Over the years, you have an opportunity to speak with others that have been in boarding schools, and most of them experience the same things.
At just 9 or 10 years old, Jack was taken from his family, separated from his siblings. His younger brother went to the Jones Academy with him, but when they got there, they too were separated.
There was 8 in my family, and 6 of us were in boarding school, and my 2 oldest sisters ran away 13 and 14, and then they got married like at 15 and 16, so that they would not have to go into the boarding schools.
The government-backed boarding schools scattered across the United States. Oklahoma had 76 Indian boarding schools, the most in the nation.
It was very hard. I mean, being 5 years old and being introduced to something totally foreign. But I made it through.
A Standing Rock Sioux woman, Brought Plenty, traveled to Anadarko from Dallas. She recalled a form of punishment where girls would be whipped with hot, wet towels.
I would see some girls taking open safety pins and sticking them in the ends of their towels. They took my friend Lucy and her friend, and they lined all of us girls up in 2 different separate lines, and they started sending the girls down a line, which we had to whip them with these wet towels. And I couldn't hit her, and so they ripped my clothes off me at the end and sent me down right after the girls.
Chief of the Shawnee tribe, Ben Barnes, shared a testimony from one of his tribal members who lives in Kansas.
It was intimated to her, or even directly threatened to her, that if she was to speak about the sexual assault perpetrated on her, that she would find herself in that cemetery. When she did speak up, after not being able to keep quiet any longer, they drugged her up and institutionalized her, sent her to a mental ward, and they attempted to have tubal ligation on her. Ultimately, it led to issues of her personal life where they took her first child away from her, she's recently rediscovered in the last 2 years.
For some survivors, this is the first time they're speaking out about the trauma they face as children that led to more struggles later in life.
Struggled through some things as well after graduation and experienced a lot of things that I didn't understand. I didn't know how to cope. I didn't know how to deal with things.
While the U.S. Interior Department works to investigate the tragedies of residential schools, Congress is making good on a nearly 200-year promise to the Cherokee Nation. The Cherokee people were promised representation in Congress in the removal treaty, the Treaty of New Echota. However, the House of Representatives must give final approval before the delegate can be officially seated.
Really incredible.
Certainly.
Appointing the Cherokee Nation's first delegate to Congress was a priority for Chuck Hoskin Jr. when he was elected principal chief in August of 2019.
In fact, that month, I nominated Kim Teehee, who had been our executive director of government relations, worked in the White House, worked on Capitol Hill, nominated her to be our delegate at Congress.
Kimberly Teehee was raised in Claremore and graduated from the University of Iowa Law School in 1995. She lives in Tahlequah now, but she hopes to be working in Washington, D.C. again soon.
We've had, pre-COVID excellent meetings. We've not had any member of Congress oppose our path. The biggest question has been how are we going to get it done, because it hasn't been done before.
Congress has passed laws to seat delegates of U.S. territories. However, Congress has never seated a delegate as a result of a tribal treaty.
Therefore, there's a precedent that will be set. And so the process is one that we're talking through now. We've actually have enlisted the assistance of former House parliamentarians whose expertise in the process and rules that govern the House have been very instrumental in helping us craft something for the House to consider.
Much like delegates for U.S. territories, the Cherokee Nation's delegate to Congress wouldn't have a vote on the House floor. However, that does not mean she wouldn't play a key role in decision making.
If you look at all that has to take place in order for a bill to become a law in the House of Representatives, for a bill to make its way through the House chamber, either in final passage or to the Senate, there's a lot of that process that delegates get to participate in just by virtue of being there.
Delegates can introduce and amend legislation, sit on and vote in committees, and speak on the House floor. For Teehee, it is important to have another Indigenous voice in the chambers.
Indian country has too few champions in Congress. One of those champions is now the Secretary of Interior at the Department of Interior, Deb Haaland. I think having another seat at the table, having somebody be an additional voice who can appreciate the issues of Indian country, who's lived through a lot of those issues as well, can certainly help.
The treaty right is unique to the Cherokee Nation, and certainly by law, this is Cherokee Nation's delegate to the House of Representatives. But in the 21st century, if you have an opportunity to put someone in a governmental body like the Congress of the United States from Indian country, you know that they're going to be an advocate for all of Indian country, and they should be.
The Cherokee Nation has received support from the National Congress of American Indians, as well as individual tribes.
All tribal leaders understand that if we assert a treaty right and we're successful, any one of us, it strengthens all of our hands in terms of treaty rights. At the same time, if we fall short, we know that that carries with it some risk. But the risk is worth it, because we ought to be asserting these rights and we ought to support each other in that effort.
House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, Congressman Markwayne Mullin, and Congressman Tom Cole have also expressed support for Teehee.
Well, you know, Congressman Mullin being a Cherokee citizen and Congressman Cole being a citizen of the Chickasaw Nation, I think for them what we've gotten back is they feel a lot of pride in the fact that this is happening because they're Native Americans, but they also want to understand the process and understand the details.
Congressman Mullin, who represents Oklahoma's 2nd District, which includes Tahlequah, sent us a statement that reads in part, appointing a tribal member from just one of the 574 federally recognized tribes as a delegate to the U.S. House of Representatives is unprecedented. At the same time, as a member of the Cherokee Nation of Oklahoma, I firmly believe tribal sovereignty and treaties with tribal nations must be honored by the federal government. From her start as an intern for the first and only female principal chief of the Cherokee Nation, Wilma Mankiller, to her time as the senior policy advisor for Native American Affairs on former President Barack Obama's White House Domestic Policy Council, Teehee has been praised for her political work, the National Women's History Museum calling her a monumental figure in history.
If you just looked at her track record as Executive Director of Government Relations for Cherokee Nation, think about the strides we made in healthcare that took a great deal of advocacy in the Congress and working with executive agencies, you would say this is the resume of somebody who was made for this position.
Teehee's experience on Capitol Hill has prepared her to act as a voice for all of Indian country when she is eventually seated in the House of Representatives.
To address the connectivity gap, to address telehealth issues, to address so many things, food deserts. So certainly making sure that their resources are there and that are set aside for tribes so that there's deployment at a level that will make a real meaningful impact to Indian country.
Principal Chief Chuck Hoskin Jr. and Delegate Kim Teehee spoke with House of Representatives at the first congressional hearing on the issue on November 16, 2022, 187 years after that treaty was signed.